American Pictures di Jacob Holdt è una raccolta di oltre 18.000 fotografie che documentano il razzismo, la povertà, l'oppressione, l'amore, l'odio e l'amicizia in America. È stato realizzato da Holdt durante i suoi 5 anni di intensi viaggi negli Stati Uniti, vissuti da vagabondo con $40 in tasca. La mostra si concentra sulle fotografie più intime, scattate nelle case del sud degli Stati Uniti, negli Appalachi e nei ghetti della costa orientale e occidentale. Ne parliamo con lui e con Lars Liendemann, che ha curato il progetto. Quindi iniziamo con appunto una domanda sul progetto. Jacob, how did the idea for the project come about and how did it become a reality?
I never got the idea to. Anyway, I just came hitchhiking from Canada down to Guatemala to be a guerrilla at the time. And I stranded in America. I immediately got interested in the black conditions in America.
Yeah.
And that is basically the short story. And then my parents sent me a little pocket camera, the cheapest they could find, so I could send some pictures home. They didn't always believe my stories, so they wanted to see some proof. And after 6 years, I came home with 15,000 pictures.
Wow.
But the idea came little by little when I started photographing the black community and started seeing myself as a messenger between black and white. And I made these little picture books to show to drivers. I was hitchhiking around what I was doing. And there I started feeling that there was a need for a messenger between blacks and whites in a totally divided society at the time. So that was gradually from that the idea of making a slideshow came. I never want to hang up my pictures on a wall.
Sure. So now a question for both of you. Did you envision your project exhibited here in Cortona in such a way that interpretation is left completely to the visitors, or are there one or more messages that you intend to communicate to those who will observe your work? Let's start with
Jacob, what do you think?
What?
What do you think? Shall I answer? Or?
Yeah, you answer.
Yeah, okay. I realized when I was working with Paul Woods and with Jacob on the project that there many photo professionals from our photographic industry, from our photographic world, never came across Jacob's, which was a surprise to me. But I think the reason is that Jacob doesn't consider himself as a photographer, and so. But he's been exhibited at museums all over Europe, at festivals, and so we tried to give it a new treat and to make more transparent, even in the hanging of the exhibition, his role in and his relations to his friends who he photographed during the time.
Would you like to add something, Jacob, to this question?
Well, I don't know what more to say.
Okay.
Interesting thing is, Jacob said from the very beginning, Lars, I'm not interested in your curation. Just do your thing and come over to Denmark and you can look at pictures, but I'm not interested.
Yeah, very, very lucky editor.
Well, let me add one thing, and that is that I said that I never wanted my pictures to be hung up on a wall.
Okay.
And because my pictures are often disturbing in a way, in a racial sense in America, showing broken blacks and apathetic blacks, and this feeds the stereotypes of the lazy black or all that, you know. So for that reason, I always want to make a slideshow with narration which explained why people were in these conditions. If you just see a picture of somebody on a wall of apathetic like this, well, the Ku Klux Klan and everybody else could use it to stereotype blacks as a whole. So for most of my life, I refused to have pictures hanging on the walls. But there was a French curator At a time, 2005, he came to Denmark and said if he couldn't make some exhibition, and I thought, well, okay, here in Europe, I was getting old, so why not hang up some pictures, you know. So he was so sweet, and therefore I said yes, because I always say yes to people. And then they ended up hanging on walls, and Steidl made a photo book, and I think from that moment on they start becoming known in the photo documentary artist world or whatever. But until then, for 30 years, they have only been presented as slideshows.
And that was actually one of the challenges we had as the curators of the show, because of the very reason, because we didn't, without a context, without providing lots of text or a keynote, we tried to avoid with the hanging and the selection of the images to repeat stereotypes. So we tried to focus on the most intimate moments Jacob shared with the people he lived and worked with, and we tried to balance between African American homes and different social contexts as well. And we added a slideshow to provide even wider context to the pictures on the wall, and we added a selection of pictures showing Jacob with his friends, or sometimes with people like James Baldwin or activist Angela Davis, to even provide more political context and historical context.
Your answers anticipate the next two questions, so I will make a question for Jacob. How was it possible to objectively photograph very sensitive social issues like racism, poverty, love, hate, without lapsing into cliché, and instead handing something more to what we normally think we know about?
First of all, when I photographed, I just floated along all the time with people. And I ended up in all these situations. I didn't search them for the most part. I had the philosophy of saying yes to anybody who invited me, wherever they took me. And sometimes I ended up in bed with them, and sometimes at gunpoint, and all kinds of situations happen. And I was just standing ready with my camera every time. And some of these images could be used in my slideshow. But a lot of them, for instance, that's one thing. Most of my pictures are known to be of black people, but I spend most time with white people in America, because they are the ones who pick you up and invite you home and so on. And they became uninteresting for me because, well, that looked just like Denmark I came from. So, and since I wanted to describe the oppression between black and white, I photographed constantly the human cost of that racial oppression, the human cost on the black side. But some of them were intimate, and I have long stories behind every intimate story, and I had some of them in the theater. About René, you have hanging down on the wall, how I made that picture. There was always a long story behind it, because it takes time to open people up to such a point. You know,
that's true.
In her case, the one photographed naked in front of the crucifix, I went on a 3-week journey with her. In the process, we got more and more intimate. We saw, not sexually, but sleeping naked to each other everywhere, because it was stifling hot like here today. And for that reason, we had developed an intimacy. So when she came back to Philadelphia, she was so glad to see her boyfriend. She jumped right in bed and didn't pay attention to me, the photographer, photographing it. You know? So it takes a long time to get into such a situation.
And you guys are still friends.
What?
And you guys are still friends 50 years later.
Question for Lars. In selecting the photographs that will make up an exhibition project, a photo book and so on, is it still possible to talk about a creative process that the editor does on the material, on the raw material provided by the photographer? What is, in your opinion, the aspect of your work on Jacob's work that is most visible to those who will access the exhibition in Cortona?
First of all, I find it's absolutely important, and most of all important, to respect the work and its author, and to understand his story or his 1,000 stories, like in Jacob's cases, and the meaning of the pictures and how to balance them and how to treat them accordingly. And secondly, if it's a body of work which has been shown before, I would just find it boring to hang the very same pictures or similar pictures or a similar selection on the walls, and that's it. So I think it's absolutely necessary to dig deep, to do research, and to think about a new treat of the work and a contemporary treat. And since the festival theme here in Cortona is me, myself, and I for Paulo Woods, and me was particularly important to include the role of the photographer and the photographer's himself, in Jacob's case, in the exhibition, and to provide transparency about the process, how the pictures were produced.
I could add to that I have I never interfere with what pictures they select, but I've already heard from many people who have been down seeing it that they really find it a very good selection. But it's also the first time I've had exhibitions in many museums and Louisiana in Denmark, etc. But it is the first time that I made a real display of me, the photographer, in the different situations with people. Wow. And I think I've already heard feedback that this they also find interesting, to see the photographer himself in all these situations, you know. So for me, that is the first exhibition.
Yeah, and that's so wonderful to hear. And yesterday we went to Kamochia station, where you can see the exhibition with Jacob's daughter, and we met Vibeke, his wife, afterwards, and they both said that they really like our treat on Jacob's work and the exhibition they've saw, and that's the most important feedback we can get as curators. The family, even more important than the artist's feedback.
What expressive meaning do you personally attach to the theme me, myself, and I?
Oh, but that's exactly what we just talked about here. Me, myself, and I think that people see a photographer behind the picture. We are bombarded with pictures, and we are numb. I feel it, especially in my high age. You become numb from pictures. I go around the exhibition here, and I think those pictures I see of people where they are themselves in, I find actually the most interesting, you know. Like the woman, the coal miner's daughter, I call her.
Stacy Krenitz?
Yeah. And so on. For some reason, there's an interaction there you can see, and that asks more questions, you know. Yeah. Because that picture in itself, it's very hard. I think it must be hard to be photo curator these days, because again, we're bombarded with pictures, you know.
For you, Lars?
Yeah, I think it worked out pretty well here. The entire team of Cortona, The Move, and Paulo Woods, Veronica Nicoladi did an amazing job finding different bodies of work reflecting or referring to the theme. Because actually, in Jacob's work, it's pretty much about the others as well. Yeah. And we added the me element to it, for sure. He had this folder with 200-something images he gave me some months ago. But in other bodies of work, like in Stacy Krenitz's work, it's a smaller part of the project. It's self-portraits of her, and she lives with the community. She's part of the community she worked with. And then there's you have Instagrammers like Janita, where it's pretty much about her staging herself with classic cars, and they found so many different bodies of work referring to this wonderful theme of the festival. So and it's reflecting on what is photography these days, and it's so important to have this statement that photography and even photojournalism shouldn't be about like covering things or people or regions or crisis from an objective perspective, because there's no such thing. There's, most of all, lots of subjectivity in photography.
So just one last question. This is an invitation to our listener. Why come visit the festival? And any advice on how to better observe your project in the exhibition?
To improve well, first of all, I want to say thank you for bringing me to a festival, because I've been to a lot of solo exhibitions around Europe, and that is very boring. One night and you open and everybody comes and say hello to you and then they go again. But here you meet a lot of other artists, and this is the fun part of such things, you know. So for that reason I'm very grateful that I came here. Improvement, I'll tell you one thing that annoyed me right away was these enormous small texts on many slides, often sitting, I have taken pictures on where they're sitting so close to the floor, so small, even when I put my glasses on, I couldn't read them. And when you see a good picture, you often want to read about it right away, and so that's one criticism.
That's why we didn't any captions to your exhibition. There are no captions.
They don't need any captions. They can buy a book instead.
Yeah, that's true.
I had a few other observations, but that's a different thing. There was nothing in the program about shuttles, and so as far as I could see, shuttles from how to get there and there. We had to run around and ask how do we get there, and so on, you know. So that's another thing. And then we got a printed, I have it, all the letters here, 7 pages of the program for the whole week. There was no but loose pages, and there was no numbers on the pages. After a couple of days, they're all mixed up, and you can't figure out, is this Saturday, is this Sunday? You know, it's just petty stuff, you know, but that's the only complaints I had, you know.
Lars?
Oh, I think there are many good reasons. Cortona is a stunning place, so Cortona itself is worth the visit, and additionally a festival like this, so extremely well curated and with a warm, welcoming team here, so there are many good reasons to come here. It's actually one of my favorite photo festivals, and for many, many years it has been always very well curated, and international guests are here. So in beautiful Tuscany, the food is amazing, the weather is nice, a bit hot these days, but still, so I can't see any reason not to come to Cortona, and the only reasons to be here.
Yeah.
And there might be a final complaint, it's too hot here in July. I mean, if you have to go walk up the hill to some of these, you give up, you know, it's too hot, you know. Yeah.
I agree. So Jacob, Lars, thank you very much for your time spent with us. We hope you had a good time with us, and enjoy the festival in Cortona. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.